It's time to share secrets and insights from fellow entrepreneurs. If you're looking to grow or start a business and you're a game changer, then keep listening to AVANTI Entrepreneur for great advice from your host, Dave Mammano, America's Entrepreneur Coach.
Hey, Avanti Tribe, Dave Mammano here. Just want to thank our sponsor, Paychex. You know, Paychex, they make it simple for businesses of all sizes to pay and manage their team. They make payroll easy with employee pay options, including direct deposit, checks, pay cards, and so much more. Founded over 4 decades ago to relieve the complexity of running a business so that the owners can focus on what matters most. Above all else, and more than any other company, Paychex makes it simple. Visit AvantiEntrepreneurGroup.com. Go to our partner link and check them out. They're offering you a free month of payroll just for giving them a shot as an Avanti Tribe member. Give them a shot, folks. They really help this podcast to be possible. Really appreciate Paychex. Now, enjoy the show. Welcome to the Avanti Entrepreneur Podcast. I am Dave Mammano, your host, and we are here to help movers and achievers and just people that shake things up. To help them move forward so that they can reach their potential. I do this by interviewing incredible business movers and shakers. Today, I have not only an incredible business mover and shaker, but a friend for, I want to say 8, 9, maybe 10 years, Marisa Smith. Marisa, welcome to the Avanti Entrepreneur Podcast. How are you?
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm great.
Well, this is long overdue. It's so good to see you and hear you. We go back. We're going to talk about that, but you are such a special person. You are so smart, and you're always so calm and cool. I don't know if you go home to a primal scream room and let it all out, but you're just so sweet and very smart. I love having you as a friend, and I love what you're doing with the world here. So, Marisa, I'm going to read your bio, and then we'll dig into some questions.
Great.
So, Marisa, we're gonna start with her entrepreneurial journey. So, since her childhood days of playing office in her parents' basement, she has been obsessed with creating processes and finding ways to automate repetitive tasks. Even as a kid, when she started her company in 2002, Marisa envisioned a flexible schedule with plenty of freedom to control her destiny. 10 years into her entrepreneurial journey, she felt like she had hit the ceiling. No matter how hard she worked, Marisa just couldn't break through to achieve her original vision. Luckily, she was introduced to the book Traction by Gino Wickman and immediately felt a glimmer of hope that perhaps she actually could get what she originally wanted from her business. As an entrepreneur and business owner, Marisa began implementing EOS, which stands for the Entrepreneurial Operating System, in her own company in 2014, and quickly felt relief from the frustrations that had been plaguing her for years. She started speaking to clients and agency colleagues about her firm's success and quickly developed a passion for helping for other entrepreneurs implement EOS into their companies. In 2014, Marisa was invited to join the leadership team at EOS Worldwide to head up the company's marketing strategy. As part of this team, she fell in love with the EOS community and vision and ultimately made the decision to become a professional EOS implementer. What a journey. What a journey here. Well, this is a long bio. We're going to dig into a lot of stuff here. You got your master's degree at the University of Michigan, correct?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And your previous business, which you're still owner of, but
Correct.
You don't run the day-to-day, is called the Whole Brain Group, which really was a marketing agency, correct? So,
Correct. Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I am going to read the fun facts. So the fun facts, you hold a BA in music with a concentration in vocal performance from Colgate University.
Woohoo, go Gate.
Upstate New York connection. Thank you very much. And you co-founded the first co-ed a cappella singing group at Colgate. That is awesome, which just celebrated its 25th anniversary. How is that possible?
Might almost be 30. I probably need to update that bio.
I don't know.
Bio. It's been around for a long time.
I think it's a typo. I think it's years. This is a cool part. This is the funnest fact. Marisa also managed the equipment for the Colgate football team, which can change, and she can change a broken helmet chin strap in under 10 seconds. That is awesome. I've never had somebody say that on my podcast, so congratulations. And you live in Ann Arbor with your 2 daughters and your 2 cats. Very good.
That's right.
Well, Marisa, again, welcome to the show. So happy to have you. Let's
Thanks.
start at the start. So years ago, you started a company called the Whole Brain Group. And what was the impetus of that? What were you doing before, and what made you say, like, you know what, I need to start my own company?
So I was working at the University of Michigan. I had gotten my master's at U of M and ended up doing academic advising in the engineering department for a few years, and ultimately decided that I didn't really like talking to students. They drove me crazy, and I kept inventing technological ways to avoid talking to them. So I learned how to build a website so that I could pass out all of the forms that they were asking me for every day online. I built a database to manage the student records and the audit process, all kinds of stuff. And my manager in that department noticed that I was kind of nerdy, and she recruited me to do technical support for the administration there. So I did that for a number of years and kind of got into all the technology side of things, and ended up on a couple of different projects where I was just helping people streamline paper processes. You know, this was early internet, right? So this was when people were moving things online. You could actually log in through this all sounds very normal now, right? But it was very revolutionary to be able to do work through a web browser and enter application data and automate it and all kinds of stuff. So I got into doing that. But I just found myself kind of on the same project over and over again at U of M, and never really felt like I was making the kind of impact that I really wanted to make. And so ultimately I decided to strike out on my own and start my own business doing custom software development is what I did initially. Did that for 4 or 5 years, hired a couple of people, started to kind of accidentally be successful there. And in 2008, the economy tanked, which is right around when you and I met each other, I think. Yeah, and all of the contracts that we had lined up with our clients went poof, pretty much overnight in a 3-week period, 2 weeks after I had my second child, which was awesome. Yeah. And when it rains, it pours, exactly, right. And so we kind of had to take stock of what we were going to do next. It was either, close the doors or figure out how to do something else. And we all went to Zingerman's Deli and sat outside as a team and said, okay, what else could we do? And we said, well, we built our own website. We could build websites for other people. And the marketing company was born, basically. Beautiful. So we did a huge pivot and taught ourselves how to do website development and inbound marketing, and got into the HubSpot community of inbound marketing, which was just getting going at that time. And kind of the rest is history. So it was pivot, pivot, pivot.
Beautiful. And
yeah.
And so of those of you that don't know Zingerman's, there must be something in the ground there, right? Because it's really the hub of entrepreneurism for not only Ann Arbor, but for so many other people. They have their own training system. And so maybe just being at Zingerman's, spending, $14 on a corned beef sandwich was a great investment for your future.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Inspired our creativity.
Yeah.
So,
and so Ari Weinsweg is the co-owner and co-founder of Zingerman's. He was on my podcast early on. And for those of you that don't know Ari or Zingerman's, please Google them. It's such an inspirational story, total side note, but Ari is one of my favorite people in the world. And they have a training facility as well. And I learn a lot there too.
They're great.
So excellent. So you started Whole Brain.
Mm-hmm.
And that became really, when the economy started doing better, I had been to your office 4 or 5 years ago, and I think I spoke to your team or some of your clients, right?
Yeah.
And it was a beautiful office, and you definitely had it going on. So it's it's a thriving business. Even stepped away from it to do EOS in your new company here. You built a beautiful business.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm very proud of it. It's pretty neat to go in there now and think about the early days and, where things are now, and just the journey we've been on. And a lot of it really did have to do with getting involved in the Small Giants community that you and I are part of, because that exposed me to the inside workings of other companies. having come right out of University of Michigan into my own business, I didn't really know what other businesses looked like or what it was like to, be a boss or an entrepreneur. I just had to kind of figure it out on my own.
Yeah.
And so being part of that Small Giants community and getting to go on those field trips that you and I would go on to different companies helped me see, how much work and thought, really intentionality needs to go into building a business. It doesn't just magically happen. I had maybe a little bit of a fantasy about that, that I, got to see the reality of it. And once I kind of realized that and put some more intention into what we were building, that made all the difference. So,
yeah. So with Whole Brain, did you feel like your journey was not over, but like you're ready to graduate from that experience and put some new water through the gills?
Yeah, I think really what happened was, we turned Whole Brain into a marketing company in some ways out of necessity, right, out of survival. And I figured out how to like what I was doing, but had never been my true passion. It was kind of like, sure, we can do this. And I figured it out because I like the intellectual challenge of learning new things. And luckily, I hired a bunch of people who actually love marketing, and they do a fantastic job for clients, but it wasn't necessarily my passion. What had driven me, kind of what was the common theme through everything I had ever done, was helping people be more efficient and effective and free themselves up to spend their time doing the things that they love. That was why I automated processes back for myself 25 years ago. That's why I automated processes when I first started my business. That's why we use HubSpot inbound marketing automation software, right? So that we could continually do things efficiently, effectively. So that was really the common theme. And so when I got involved in EOS and saw the kind of impact it had on my own business and the other people who were using it, I realized that was really the thing that was going to enable me to spend all of my time, in my sweet spot. So hence the final pivot, hopefully, pivot of my career.
You never know.
You never know, but
you never know. Just enjoy the journey, right?
Right. I'm feeling good about it right now.
Excellent. So your new company now, where you are doing the EOS implementations, is called 87 Plus. Why is that?
So I joined up with another implementer named Don Tinney, who actually was the co-founder of EOS Worldwide with Gino Wickman back in the day. And so Don is now just an implementer, and I am also just an implementer. So it was actually Don's idea to have that name, and it comes from the organizational checkup that we do as EOS implementers with our clients, that's built on this idea that you want to be strong in all 6 key components of your business. So the whole EOS model is built on these 6 key components of a strong and healthy business. Having everybody on the same page with the vision and what the plan is to get there, having all the right people in the right seats, making decisions based on data instead of, gut feelings, being able to solve issues really well, having all of your processes documented and, consistent and scalable, and then having traction, so focus and discipline and accountability. So those are the 6 key components. And there's an organizational checkup tool that we use to help measure the strength. So you're on this journey from like 0 to 100% strong in all of the 6 key components. And once you're up in that 87 plus range, that's a pretty great company to work for and to own and be an employee of. So you're never going to get to 100% because that's utopia. But if you can get up in that 87 plus range, that's a pretty great place to be. So hence the name.
Very cool. Very cool.
Long-winded explanation, but it kind of requires all the context. So.
Well, there's a story behind it. And I'm sure you get asked that a lot, like why 87 plus, right?
Yeah.
It's like, do you want to work until you're 87?
There you go.
Right?
I didn't even think about that subtext, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So I have to tell you, I'm a big fan of EOS. I'm a big fan of Traction. I've read the book twice. The first time I read it, I was so excited because our good friend Rob Dubay, who has been on my podcast twice, was one of the first clients that Gino Wickman, used EOS system. And so he talks about it as one of the first kind of test cases that really worked well. And now Rob's, like I said, been on my podcast twice, doing the Do Nothing podcast and movement, which is pretty cool. And, you could go to AVANTIEntrepreneurgroup.com to listen to that. And then I talked to Gino, not on my podcast. He seems like he doesn't,
Not a big fan of the podcast. Yeah.
Likes to be in the background at this point. It sounds like. But I did talk to Mike Payton, who really is a big face of the company now, right? And
yeah, he's great.
And he's wonderful. And I've talked to Paul. We know so many people. Paul Spiegelman, the founder of Small Giants Community. Ari, of course, Sue Hawks, you introduced me to. She was just on my podcast a few weeks ago. Wonderful story. So thanks for all the great connections. And Denise Kavanaugh, who's going to be on my podcast soon. We're going to interview her in a few weeks as well. So a lot of great connections here from Rochester, New York to Ann Arbor, Michigan, right? And actually, when I'm in Ann Arbor, I feel a very similar vibe to Rochester, because it's an educated community. It's Rochester. It's not a huge city, either is Ann Arbor, but I think we punch pretty hard for our weight, we'll say, right? So
yeah, I just love living here. So it's great.
My God, Ann Arbor is speaking of utopia. I mean, Ann Arbor is a utopia, I have to say.
Yeah, it's great.
To live. And a big reason of that is because of Zingerman's, right?
Absolutely. Best
sandwiches ever. Come on. So I would love to learn more about how you help people with what you do with 87 Plus and EOS. So let's walk through we'll do a scenario, right? So let's say, I'm in business here for 2.5 years. I've grown to a couple $1 million. I've grown it with my own gut instincts. And as you felt years ago with your other company, you got stuck, right? You kind of hit the ceiling, frustrated, working your tail off, right? But not really going anyplace. What are some of the first things you're going to do with me to, quote unquote, stop the insanity and help
right.
Get a grip, right?
Right. Get it. Yeah, see, it's right behind me on the wall there. So, right. So there's a number of ways to implement EOS, from kind of DIYing it, doing it yourself. We call that self-implementation, to working with an implementer. So I'll take you through the implementer route, since that's what I do. So there are 250-ish professional implementers around the world now. I think it's 248 or something like that. And so all of the professional implementers in the community are trained to help people purely implement EOS. So meaning to implement it in the way that it was intended and has been proven to work, 10,000 times before. And so if you work with an implementer, the first step on the journey is that you do something we call a 90-minute meeting. So if somebody is interested in implementing EOS, they can contact a professional implementer, and we will come in and for free give you a 90-minute overview of the system, just so you can kind of get a sense of what done looks like, what it looks like when you're 100% running on EOS, so you can decide whether or not that's the journey that you want to embark on. So once you do that 90-minute meeting, it's typically with the owners of the company, the leadership team, the folks who are in charge of, sales and marketing, finance, operations, things like that. So it's typically a small team that does that 90-minute meeting. And then they decide, do they want to move forward or not? And if they do, then essentially what we do is get you up and running on the tools. We do 3 sessions in 3 months, so 3 full-day sessions. The first thing is called a focus day. And in that focus day, we help you build the accountability chart for your company, so you can get clear on what the structure should be to take your company to the next level. We help set the priorities for this first quarter and teach the team how to set priorities and how to agree on what the handful of things is everybody should be laser focused on for 90 days. We help you learn how to run a great level 10 meeting, which is the meeting format that all EOS companies run their leadership team meetings on. It's a specific agenda, a way to manage time and attention in those meetings. And then we take a stab at building a scorecard for the leadership team to use as well, so that you have a set of key measurables that you're looking at week after week, so you can start to get a pulse on your business. So it's really just teaching these foundational tools in that first session, so you can start to gain some traction. Then you go off and you practice for 30 days. And then you come back and we start to build the vision for the company. So we spend a full day working on building the vision. We usually get about halfway done in that first day. You go back, you practice for another 30 days, you come back, we finish building out the vision. And there's a tool that we use called the Vision Traction Organizer. It's a 2-page business plan. And it has things on it like, what are your core values? So just defining what are the handful of characteristics you want everybody in the company to share, so you're building the kind of great culture that you want to build. What's your core focus? What's your sweet spot, right? What should your company be laser focused on? What's your 10-year target, your long-range goal, your marketing strategy, who's your ideal customer, what kind of message will resonate with them, your 3-year picture, your 1-year plan, your rocks, and your issues. So there's these 8 questions that you answer as a leadership team, and you basically, the implementer facilitates the team to get agreement on what goes on into that document. So everybody's seeing the same thing, everybody's on the same page, and once you're all aligned, then you can go out of the room and start to cascade some of this stuff into the organization. But if the leadership team's not on the same page, that's never going to happen. So that's kind of the first 3 sessions, is just getting them up and running on the tools, getting clear on the vision. And then from then on out, it's meeting every quarter for a full day to look back at how'd you do with predicting where you'd be in the next 90 days, how'd you do with sticking to your priorities and getting completed, and then picking your priorities for the next 90 days and resolving any issues that are standing in your way. Do that every single quarter. Once a year, you do a 2-day annual, just so you can kind of reset for the upcoming year as well. But it's about 5 sessions a year with an implementer until you're ready to graduate. So ideally, clients are learning to do this. We're getting this in their DNA, and we're trying to create independence, not dependence on an implementer. So most clients work with an implementer for about 2 years before they're ready to do it on their own. Some clients stay with implementers forever because they really like having the outside person facilitate their sessions. They like, being able to just participate and not facilitate. But others, take it over themselves after a couple of years. So.
Yep.
That's how it works.
Well, it's awesome, and I've been through the process. The Vision Traction Organizer, the VTO, is a great tool to say that stop the bleeding and move forward, right?
Yes, right.
And I think that it just seems like to have that person come in from the outside, help you see the forest through the trees, and be that accountability person to make sure that you're thinking and planning and executing these things. Because a lot of small to medium sized business entrepreneurs, which I imagine is the majority of your clients, we're crazy, right? We're a little manic, we're a little crazy, we're the mad scientists that invent the product. We're not like you. I mean, you were kind of I'll say a good freak in the fact that you are an entrepreneur, but so good with systems and processes. I mean, you love that stuff. So you have a gift of being like, an entrepreneur / nerd. So
right. I like that.
I mean that in the best way.
A nerdtrepreneur.
I like that. I think you just said that. We just invented a word for AVANTI. Greg Gordon, one of my partners, said, let's start calling our members AVANTipreneurs. I'm like,
oh, there you go.
I like that, What about the URL? It's art. So,
awesome.
But I highly recommend, and listen, there's other programs out there, but just EOS is certainly a great one. But just I recommend to any entrepreneur, any business owner, it's so helpful to have that outside person keep you on track, because otherwise, so we can do it on our own, and some can, but a lot can't. A lot just don't have the discipline to go deep with it. It's not their talent. It's not their superpower.
Right. Right. And it's hard when sometimes the issues that you're struggling with, open and honest, I caused a lot of the issues that we were struggling with without even realizing it, right? And once we actually because we self-implemented for 2 years at Whole Brain Group, because I thought, well, I understand the process, I can do this, right? Sure. But as it turns out, when you're very close to your own issues, you can't always see what the root cause is. And so we actually hired an implementer a couple of years in, and it was like, we were making progress on our own, but when we got him in the room, we went like, right? And within 18 months, I was no longer going into the office. Chris was running the show. He really just helped me let go and get the framework put in place and have the discipline to not sabotage things by accident, right? I kept thinking I was being helpful, right? But in fact, it was not so helpful. Yeah.
Love the quote marks around helpful. Well, and that's, it's many times the biggest strength of the founder is the biggest bottleneck of the company, because they can't grow past the strengths of the leader, right?
Right.
And so, and a lot of companies will, the entrepreneur will realize I'm not the best person to be the CEO of this company. I'll take a founder role, do
Right.
what I do best, and bring in a CEO who's maybe better at processes and organizations and operations.
Right.
And I think that's great. That's great.
Yep.
It involves the founder putting his or her ego in the back pocket. But
Right.
what is best
Which
for the
is
company?
not easy.
What is
Right.
the best for the company, though, right? Is it
Yeah.
having the title, or maximizing the company to where it should be, right? The potential
Right.
of impact.
Right. And a lot of founding entrepreneurs, we've got the passion, we've got the energy for whatever the thing is that we're doing, right? Software development, marketing, whatever. But we don't always have the passion for the building of the business and all the honestly sometimes boring stuff that you got to do to build a successful business. That isn't necessarily where the entrepreneur's passion is.
Yep.
And when that's not your sweet spot, even if you can muddle your way through and do it, you're still potentially doing damage to the company, because people can tell that your heart isn't in it, right? And you're just kind of phoning it in. And that's the point I had gotten to, where I could be the integrator because I'm very organized and good at systems, but I don't like being the integrator in my company, that person who's in charge of harmoniously integrating all the different pieces and parts of the company. The bigger we got, the more time that took up in my schedule, the more miserable I got. And then I was making everybody else miserable too.
Yeah.
And I'll be, honestly, it was dinner at a Small Giants event with, I think it was like Rob Dubé on one side and Jason Teshuba on the other side, both of whom were in EOS companies. And I was complaining, as I would, about my company. And they both were like, you got to use EOS. You are sitting in the integrator seat and you aren't suited for that seat. You got to get out of there. And that was kind of the aha moment that I needed to finally do something about it.
Good for you.
It was transformational.
Yeah,
for sure.
And for those people that we talked about Small Giants a couple times, for those of you that don't, our listeners that don't know about Small Giants, please tell us a little bit about that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so the Small Giants community got started because of the book Small Giants by Bo Burlingham, which was 2005, is it? 2005, 2006, I think it was published. Yeah, something like that. And so Bo is a writer for Inc. magazine and now for Forbes, correct?
Yeah.
And what he noticed when he was writing articles for the magazines that he wrote for was that there were certain characteristics that a lot of these companies had in common, that wanted to be great and not just big. And I think Zingerman's was really the inspiration initially for that, right? It was kind of this idea that the owners really knew who they were and what they wanted out of business. They wanted to be involved in the community. They wanted to build a great culture and have strong relationships with their employees and their partners and their vendors. I can't recall all of the 6 qualities off the top of my head, but there are 6 qualities outlined in the book. And so he wrote this book, and then there were a number of companies who read the book, including Paul Spiegelman, who thought, I want to know other companies that are trying to do this, right? I want to connect with those companies. And so Paul and Bo built a community of like-minded business owners, and David and I were at the first kickoff meeting, right, for that for that organization. And over time, it's really grown. I'm not sure how many official members there are now, but there's a website, smallgiants.org, and they do annual summit. They have a leadership passport journey. I forget what they're calling it now, where you can go on this journey and kind of learn how to become a small giant. And you go on trips to different companies and see the inner workings of those companies. It's just a really great organization to connect with people who are trying to do the same thing, so you can learn from one another and not feel so alone in it. So
don't go at it alone. I think they have mastermind groups now, and they have online programs and all that stuff too.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, you just reminded me, 2 weeks ago, I had Hamza Daher on the podcast as well.
Yeah.
And she is.
So I'm sure if you go back and listen to that episode, you'll learn all about Small Giants.
Yeah, and I've had Paul Spiegelman too. So
Great.
Paul Spiegelman and Hamza Daher, listen to those, because those are great podcasts to learn more about the Small Giants community, which I love as well. I read the book, when it first came out, and I loved it so much that I ended up just calling a lot of the Small Giants in the book. I called Norm Brodsky, I called Ari Weinswig, I called Jay Goltz, and I remained friends with them all today. In fact, I met Bo through Norm, because I was
Right.
interviewing Norm, and Bo just happened to walk in the office. I was like a young Beatles fan.
Right. Yeah.
And, of
Right.
course, Bo is such an incredible person. We became instant friends, and
Right.
I'm amazed that I had the audacity to just call the people.
Call people.
In the book, and
Right.
and so when Paul Spiegelman came up with the idea for the Small Giants community, he connected us and said, "Hey, Dave, how'd you like to get involved in this?" I said, "Absolutely." And it's
Right.
years later, it's a thriving nonprofit that's making a great impact.
Huge impact. Right. Right. Yeah.
So in our last few minutes here, I'm going to ask you some tough questions. Are you ready?
Oh boy. Okay.
60
Yep.
minutes, and you are Donald Trump. So you obviously are very successful. You've had a great journey, and it continues to evolve. And I love, you're like me. I mean, you're doing something different than you were a few years ago. I am too, as you know. And but do you have a story you can share with our listeners when, I ask people, do you have like a crashed and almost burned story? But obviously,
God.
You continue to rise like the phoenix, so, because I think, I know that, a lot of people view entrepreneurship as this, glorious lifestyle. And,
The meteoric rise to fame and fortune.
And the house and the vacations and the
Right.
sexy spouse. And, and then, you get into it. It's like, instead you're waking up at 3 a.m, like in the fetal position, wondering like,
Right.
how am I going to make payroll tomorrow? Right. And,
Mhm.
and everywhere in between. I mean, some days we think we're king of the world, and usually sometime that same day, we're looking for the next bridge, and everywhere in between. So can you share some of the times with us that, you were like, what the heck am I doing? But you got through it.
Yeah. So I'd have to go back to that 2008 time period, right? So the economy tanks. I had a baby November 14th and had, set myself up to actually have a maternity leave since I didn't have one with my first daughter. Like 2 weeks later, we started to get calls from all of the clients that we had contracts with saying, basically, we're canceling the contracts because, the economy and, cuts in spending and that kind of thing. And so my maternity leave got canceled. I brought my daughter, into the office with me, and was, changing diapers on the conference room table, pumping while I'm listening to conference like it was just the worst.
Yeah.
Waking up, barely having any sleep just because of the baby, right? And then not knowing if we were going to even be able to survive this because all the income that we were counting on was, gone. So I was putting stuff on credit cards. I ran up all kinds of debt just because I was like trying to figure out what we were, going to do. And I kept thinking like, oh, it'll just be a couple of months, right? And then another month would go on. We kind of went almost 6 months. I didn't get paid. I was putting everything on credit cards. And I went to meet with my lawyer in, I think it was March or April of 2009, just, trying to figure out what I was going to do. And he said, like, Marisa, you either have to declare bankruptcy, right? Or you need to like fix this really quickly. Like you have to go sell something like tomorrow or else like you're going to lose everything. And I was like, crying. And because I had been kind of hiding everything from my team. Like I felt like this was my thing. I had to figure out, it was my company. I wasn't going to,
that's what
right. It wasn't going to burden them with it, So people would ask me, I'd be like, oh, it's fine. I'm figuring it out. Meanwhile, I'm like feeling like I'm going to throw up every day. Right.
Right.
And so I went back to the office and I called everybody in and I was like, this is what's happening. And, expecting that everybody was going to like walk out and quit. And I was going to, have to shut the office down. And instead what happened was that everybody was like, what can we do to help? Let's fix it. Let's come up with a plan. And nobody left, believe it or not. We only had a team of like 7 people. It wasn't a giant company, but that was still a lot of, responsibility on me and feeling,
Sure.
These families were depending on me. And we basically came up with a plan to turn things around, to start selling websites. And, Bonnie, who worked for me at the time, I would strap my daughter into the baby Bjorn, and she and I would literally walk up and down the street into different businesses of people we knew to see if they were interested in buying website stuff from us.
How can they say no with the baby, right? Come on.
Well, exactly. I was like, I might as well use this to my advantage because she was adorable, right?
Yeah.
And over time we just kind of, step by step started to turn things around, but that was probably the lowest point that I can remember. And when Paul, it was right in that springtime, he invited, me and everybody else to come to that Zingerman's event at the Roadhouse to get the Small Giants community started. I thought, what am I doing going to this? I don't deserve to be with these people because my life is falling apart. My business is, on the verge. But I went anyways. I don't know why. I brought Caitlin with me. I still have a picture of Caitlin, the baby, being held by Bo at that event. And it was something about being with that group of entrepreneurs that got me re-energized that I could figure it out, because there were other people there talking about the crap that they had gone through. And that's, because we all have kind of the Christmas card version of our lives, right? Sure. That we talk to people about.
The Facebook post, right?
Exactly. And there were people at the table kind of sharing some war stories. I think you were one of them. And I know Anise was across the way from me as well. And I kind of got some perspective on that and said, okay, you know what? If these guys can do it, I can do it too. And that was one of the things that got me kind of to charge ahead. Because I could have quit, I could have quit, and I decided not to. And it would have been fine if I had quit too, right? But another friend of mine said to me right around that same time, this is going to make a great book someday.
Yeah, there you go. Movie.
I've yet to write that book, but yeah. So here we are on the other side.
Well,
thank
thanks
goodness.
For sharing that. Thanks for sharing
but it was.
That. Yeah, it's not pretty, right? It's not. I mean, you
not
can
pretty.
And be like, thank God I got through it. But I'll be pressed hard to find an entrepreneur that hasn't been through a similar story, right?
Yeah.
It's just part of the journey, right? And it's tough. I mean, I'm sure you woke up at 3 a.m. wondering, like, what the hell am I doing with my life? You could go work someplace, probably make, 6.
Why did I leave U of M where they had like 12 weeks of vacation and 2-to-1 matching on their 401k? Like, what was I thinking? Right?
Yeah, but I bet you're happy that you did stick with it, and
absolutely,
very happy now. That's great. Thanks for sharing that. I appreciate that. And that really is the story of entrepreneurship, folks. I mean, some days, I'm sure you feel like your poop doesn't stink, you're queen of the world, and even probably still wake up at 3 a.m. with fears, anxieties about what's going on, and everywhere in between. It's a roller coaster, right? So, I posted a quote yesterday. I'd like to post some motivational, inspirational things on Facebook and LinkedIn. I found a great one. Something about, I forgot exactly what it said, but it's a quote that, when the times get really, really difficult, you gotta, you have to continue to move forward and jump, because God will either catch you or teach you how to build a plane on the way down.
Right? That's usually the entrepreneurial plan. Like, we'll figure it out, right?
We'll figure it out. And we do somehow.
We do. Right?
Yeah. So very good. Well, Marisa, this has been fantastic. I'm sure people are going to want to get in touch with you. I was going to promote your book. We don't have one yet, but maybe,
next year.
Maybe this will be the inspiration to have you start that, and we could have another podcast to talk about your new book, right? So
there we go.
But would love to get your contact info. What's the best way that our listeners can reach out to you?
So I'm on LinkedIn, of course, Marisa B. Smith. I think it's, LinkedIn/Marisa B. Smith. On Twitter, Marisa_Smith 1 at the end, because there's some other Marisa Smith out there, I guess.
But you're not.
And then my website is www.87plus.com.
Yep, and we'll have that in the show notes. And just so you guys know too, Marisa, you spell it with 1 S, correct?
1 S, correct. Marisa.
Very good. Marisa, thank you so much. So excited for you. And I'm really glad you shared your journey. And I will hopefully see you. I made a promise to Rob Dubay and Hamza Daher that I will be at the Small Giants Conference in 2020.
Awesome.
In Detroit, I believe, right? So, so hopefully I will see you there, if not before.
I think the unfortunate part is it's the exact same dates as the EOS conference in Atlanta.
Oh gosh,
bad timing, right? But we'll still find each other.
All right, maybe I'll have to come do this Zingerman's training or something. So very good. All right, well, thanks again, Marisa, and congratulations on your great success.
Thanks for having me.
Yep, and thank you. Thank you, Avanti listeners, for listening to the Avanti Entrepreneur Podcast. For more interviews, show notes, etc., go to AvantiEntrepreneurGroup.com, where you can get all of it. We're up to over 100 interviews now. I've been doing this for over 2 years now, every week. Wow. It's the most consistent thing I've ever done with my life, besides getting up in the morning and going to bed. So I love my podcast. Thanks for listening. Make it a great day and stay awesome.
Thank you for listening. Head over to AVANTIEntrepreneurgroup.com for show notes and more helpful advice from entrepreneurs like you. Continue to find your entrepreneurial rhythm at the Avanti Entrepreneur Podcast.